everyone. Thank you, Gonçalo, for such an amazing introduction, and thank you all for coming to my talk, LiveView, Startup's New Secret Weapon. My name is Daniel Caixinha, and as someone born and raised here in Lisbon, I'm very happy to be welcoming you all to this beautiful city. I'm a software engineer at a company called Sona, and we'll hear more about what Sona does and how we are using Elixir and LiveView later on this talk. First, I'd like to begin by celebrate the arrival of the beautiful and shiny Phoenix emoji into the Unicode standard that you can see up there. So now as part of Unicode 15.1, we have this beautiful emoji for a Phoenix. So last year, a couple of months after last ElixirConf EU, I was rereading Paul Graham's Hackers and Painters. And reading this book had two effects on me. First, it really ignited the desire to go back at working for a startup. And second, it really got me thinking about what it must be like to use LiveView in production, and yeah, we'll see why in a bit. So this book is a collection of essays from Paul Graham's blog, and in chapter 12 there's an essay called Beating the Averages, which is my favorite chapter. And for context to the quotes we're about to see next, in this chapter, he starts by telling the story of how back in 1995 they created a startup called Via Web, which was one of the first consumer-facing applications to be written in Lisp. And so at one point, he's reflecting on the reasons for the startup's success, and he writes, "It must have seemed to our competitors that we had some kind of secret weapon, that we were decoding their Enigma traffic or something. In fact, we did have a secret weapon, but it was simpler than they realized. No one was leaking news of their features to us. We were just able to develop software faster than anyone thought possible." And then in another passage further ahead, we have, "If you can use any language, which do you use? We chose Lisp. For one thing, it was obvious that rapid development would be important in this market. We knew Lisp was a really good language for writing software quickly, and server-based applications magnify the effect of rapid development because you can release software the minute it's done." And it's this part, this speed of development part, that really got me thinking and drawing parallels with LiveView. Before I go on with my talk, I just want to make a quick aside to share another passage I found interesting. And it's around this dichotomy of running software on the server versus running it as a desktop application, and how this was already being debated some 30 years ago. So it seemed such a novel idea to us that we named the company after it, Via Web, because our software worked via the web instead of running on your desktop computer. We had a what you see is what you get online store builder that ran on the server and yet felt like a desktop application. Our competitors had CGI scripts. And what I found funny and interesting here is also how the lines are blurred nowadays, because we have server-side rendered applications that can feel like a desktop application in a way, and then we have some desktop software that is really a web application in disguise under WebView. So anyway, as I was preparing this talk, another thought popped into my mind. Here we have a few logos from some very famous household companies like GitHub, Shopify, Airbnb, Stripe, Heroku, SoundCloud, Zendesk, and Square. Can anyone on the audience say what do all of these logos have in common? Yes, so that was very quick. Cool. So yeah, these are all Ruby startups that were created around the late 2000s, from 2006 to 2009 to be exact. And I understand that correlation is not causation, and I'm not saying it was because of Ruby that these startups succeeded so much. There are many things that have to go right for a company to achieve that level of success, from who and how you hire, to how you structure your teams, or how you address the market and manage your existing clients. But I can't help but think that the technology these companies chose really played a big part in their fate. And if you recall, at this time, Ruby and Rails really felt like a secret weapon in a way, because of the speed and productivity they brought to the table. If, for example, you think about Rails generators and how they simplified a lot of common tasks, or how easily you could create an authentication system with Device. But I'm not just talking about the speed of producing code. Perhaps equally important is the flexibility that this gave to a lot of companies. You could create a proof of concept, adapt it, show it to clients, and then adapt it according to the feedback you got from the real world. And all of these things that I mentioned around speed and flexibility are important for every company, but are really much more important to a startup because, in a way, it's their secret sauce. Having said all of this, I think the table stakes are higher nowadays than what I was just talking about. Since CPUs aren't getting any faster, like being able to easily write applications that make use of all the cores in a machine isn't really a choice, but a must-have. And I think the same can be said about building applications with a good UX and perhaps some real-time features. And I think most companies recognize that the stakes are indeed higher in this sense, but usually this comes at the cost of a lot of added complexity. And so, yeah, last year I was attending ElixirConf here in Lisbon, and I was really mesmerized with the talks that I saw and what we can already do with LiveView, and not just LiveView, but also LiveBook, Bumblebee, Membrane, etc. And also, it wasn't just the great talks, it's also the amazing hallway track where I got to meet and learn from a bunch of incredible people around the community. And so I left the conference wondering how it must be like to use LiveView in production. And a few months later, I got the chance to do just that because I joined Sona. And Sona is a 2-year-old startup that's using Elixir and LiveView from the start. And I'd like to give you some context around what we do, just because it's important to frame the live demos we'll see in a bit. So we are building a modern workforce management solution that's specifically tailored for frontline teams. And just in case you don't know what the frontline team is, just like I didn't before I joined Sona, these are companies that employ people that don't work at a desk and have highly dynamic schedules. Like if we think about a caring provider or a nurse who has a lot of different shifts within a day, some possibly in different locations. And managing a workforce such as this one is very complex, mostly because it is very dynamic. And another thing I didn't know before I joined Sona is that there are companies out there with hundreds or sometimes thousands of employees that are still managing all of this using pen and paper or spreadsheets. Which then in turn leads to companies either being overstaffed or understaffed. So they are either spending more money than they would need to, or they are asking their own staff to pick up overtime work, which then has its own toll. So we build an admin portal and where managers can build their weekly schedules. And this is the part that's all built in LiveView, and we'll see a demo of it later. We also then build an Android and iOS mobile application that workers can use, which gives them more control of their own schedule, which in turn leads to higher job satisfaction. And yeah, we have a screenshot of the mobile app there. So enough context for now. So I joined Sona, I'm really eager to jump in, start working. First day on the job, I cloned the repo, and wow, there was a lot going on. So it's one thing to have a couple of side projects in LiveView, and another completely different thing to work in a production system. But this was just for a few days. I just included this just as a joke on this talk. In reality, it was the fact that someone like me, with almost zero front-end experience, was able to jump in and start contributing and being productive that gave me the idea for this talk. So let's go on for the first demo of the day. I really wanted to share with the community an example of how Elixir and LiveView are being used in production. So I've prepared 3 short demos, and then after each demo we can see some of the code that's behind each one. One thing that I would like to highlight before jumping on the demos is that the code we will see today is all very simple, definitely not rocket science, and that's exactly my point. The fact that we can achieve so much with so little code increases our speed as a company, and it's exactly why I think LiveView is kind of a secret weapon. So if I change tab here, yeah. Can you see it okay? Yeah, cool. So here we have what we call the roster, where managers can build their weekly schedules. Yeah, basically we have one or more locations, like they can choose to see one or more locations. Within each location, you have the current week, and then each row is a worker, and the worker can have one or more shifts within a day. And so one of the first things that I did after I joined Sona was adding this ability to filter by certain workers. So we already had this ability to filter by locations, and we also wanted to give managers the ability to filter for certain workers so that they can build their schedules, like find certain people and build their schedules in an easier way. So if we, for instance, select this tree one and we just get, here we are getting 2 because this worker is not in this location, but yeah, you see the point. So basically, the rows appear and disappear according to what the manager has selected here, and they can also just type worker's name, so that they can easily build their rosters. So let's go back and see what's behind all this. So first, within this roster live module, which is like the live view that's powering that weekly roster view, the first thing I needed to do was add a new line here, a new component, which is called filter by staff, so which is like that drop-down component. And I have to say that this ability to compose our live views and web pages with stateless or stateful components was something I didn't give enough credit for before I worked on a real application. With this, we can not only reuse components across our application and have a consistent UX, but also very important to me is we can hide the implementation details so that when we are reading the source code for this, the roster, we don't need to care about what's inside this. It makes just the mental load, less mental load when reading the code. So let's peek into this filter by staff component. Here we just have a regular Phoenix component with a couple of attributes. So the staff options, which is like the full worker list, then another list, which is the ones that were selected by the manager. In this case, we are just calling one of our components, which is a multi-select. So we are reusing the one that was used for the location filter. There's not much going on here. We are just passing those lists as attributes. Because of the way of our multi-select core component is done, we then get a handle info callback whenever a manager clicks on that dropdown on each checkbox. So here in the third element of this tuple, the selected staff, we will receive the list of selected staff, and then we do a push patch. So this is just a helper function we have to push patch and merges the existing query parameters with this new one, which is the staff at the end there. And so once that's done, the handle params callback is invoked. This is just as I promised, very simple code. We are just going through the list of visible staff, which is like all the workers within that week. And we use simple functions like enum filter and enum member to just do that logic of filtering and produce a new list with just the selected staff. So then we set a new assign called selected staff. And once this scaffolding is done and we have that new assign for the selected staff, we can, so as we are iterating over each org unit, which is kind of what we call a location in the code base, once we have this new assign, all that I needed to do to have that dynamic behavior of hiding or showing rows according to that filter was changing this line here. Instead of passing the assign with all the workers, I just pass a new assign with selected staff, and it just works. I didn't have to worry about anything else. I know this one seemed a bit too easy because we already had that multi-select component, so we are skipping a lot of the code that would be necessary to have this interaction. So now let's jump on to the second demo of the day. If I change here and here, cool. So let's get everyone back on the roster. I'm filtering here. Cool. So, sorry. Yeah, here we have this roster view again. So another thing that I worked on was adding the ability to set skills on shifts. So, for instance, we have many different kinds of shifts, and our clients would like to say that a certain shift can only be worked if you have a certain skill. So if we click here to create a new shift, we have this new component, which is required skills. And here I've just created a couple of skills that I came up with. So once we focus this input element, we get this list showing up. In this case, we have 3 skills like medication admin, driving heavy vehicles, or overnight clearance. Basically, the manager can click and select. In this case, this user does not have the required skills. So I guess this one has. So you can just set skills. Once you focus the element, it shows up. You can also remove skills, and or set multiple skills. oh yeah, in this case the shift time is overlapping, so it's not working to save. But yeah, you get the point. So yeah, let's get back and see some of the code behind this. So within this add shift module, which is a component that's driving that modal where we are adding a new shift, first of all, we set the initial state. So within the update callback, we set an empty list for the skills. So that's the skills that are set on that shift. We also set the skill value. And yeah, this is actually something that I didn't demo, and I can quickly demo. So here, when adding a new skill, so that managers can quit, like this list has only 3 options, but if it has much more options, they can type and filter that list. You know, like if I type math, it works that way. So here, that's what this skill value is for. So we set it to an empty string, and then we call this assign available skills, and that's the list of all the available skills for that location. Here we are just calling a function from the skills context, and then again, we are using enum filter just to filter that based on the value of that the user is typing on the text box. So we assign all of this, and then within the render, let's just look at some of the markup that we added to create to have this interaction. So first of all, we are iterating over the skills assign, which initially is empty, for each one, we are creating a new list item. In this case, we render a skill name with some CSS classes, so it shows up like that little button. We also render a cross icon, which will be used to remove the skill, if you see the PHX click there. And yeah, this is what shows the existing skills on a certain shift. And then this is the actual text, the text input, so the text box where managers can type. And here we are using a couple of Phoenix attributes like Phoenix focus and Phoenix click away. And this is driving that interaction where when it's focused, it shows up the list. When it's clicked away, it hides the list. And we'll see how we are doing that on the callback just in a second. And yeah, that's basically it. We are also using some sprinkles of Alpine.js so that when we select the skill, we basically the text input is cleared out, so it's empty again. And yeah, basically, if this assign show available skills is set to true, we show that list. If it's not, we hide it. So again, as promised, very simple code. Here, basically, the callbacks for the input being focused or unfocused, we are just setting that Boolean. Then this skill changed callback is when the manager is typing on the text input. We are just calling the assign available skills again, passing in the skill name, so the contents of the text input. And yeah, it just works. And lastly, whenever a manager clicks on a certain skill from the list, it will this callback will be called. And here we are just updating the list of selected skills, like we are literally like appending that list with the new selected skill and returning the updated socket. And this last one is just when that cross button is clicked, we remove the skills from that list and return the updated socket. So what if we wanted to select certain skills by default? So what if inside a certain location, we wanted to have certain skills already pre-selected. And this is actually something that we developed because it's something our clients wanted. So just to quickly demo that. So in this location, we don't have that configured, but in this one we do. So if I click Add Shift here, we can see that this skill is automatically pre-selected, and in this case, the user doesn't have the skill. So if we go back, the update callback had this code, if we recall. Here we are assigning an empty list to the skills. If we just change one line and start calling a function from the skills context to get the default required skills for a certain location, it just works. So yeah, I was kind of amazed by how this all just fits together. So let's go on to the final demo of the day. Let me go back here. So let's go back to this location. And yeah, the final demo is around how we can drag and drop shifts. So it's kind of showing how a real example, a real world example of how Phoenix LiveView and JavaScript interoperability are working together. So for instance, here we can just grab a shift. And as you can see there, we are then rendering that gray background so that we know where we are dropping it into. And then, in this case, we have moved this shift to a different day, but we can also just move it to a different worker. So in this case, this shift can be moved to this worker. So yeah, let's just quickly see the code behind this. And yeah, last year at ElixirConf EU, on the final keynote, Chris McCord gave a really cool demo of his to-do track application. At one point, he demoed this ability to drag and drop to-do list items. And yeah, it was really great. And before I move on, just a big shout out to Umid, who did all this amazing work. So it wasn't me actually building this one, unlike the first two demos. So this is all the JavaScript that we had to include in our application, in our hooks. It's really similar to what we have seen on the last slide by Chris McCord, just with some minor differences. And then, yeah, what did we have to change in our application to have all that dynamic behavior? So each shift inside that schedule is what we call a shift card, so it's a component. So the first thing we need to do is set this new attribute called isDraggable. So this function, for instance, our business logic is a bit more complicated, but here, for instance, we are setting a Boolean called isDraggable on that struct, and in this case, it is draggable if it is actionable, so if it can be edited, and if it has not been approved for payroll. So yeah, just as an example of that. So within then the markup of each shift card, we had to add this Phoenix hook sortable so that Phoenix can connect things and know this element is sortable. And here we are passing a data shift ID, and this is a way for us to pass extra information to the callback we'll receive once we get the reposition event from sortable.js. We'll see an example we'll see that in action in a bit. And then, for instance, here we are, we are setting different CSS classes according to whether the card is draggable or not. If it is draggable, we are setting, for instance, the background gray and yeah, some other nice CSS classes. Then within the background, so there's another component which is the background, which is kind of like the destination where a shift is being dragged and dropped into. In that case, we had to change. We had to make these changes. So we added the Phoenix hook sortable attribute as well, and then we are passing just a bunch of data that, in our case, is useful to validate that this is a valid drag and drop operation. So here it's the call. Here is the code for the callback once a drag and drop happens. So as I was saying, like. This is an easy and simple way to pass attributes. In this case, we have the shift ID, the worker ID, the org unit ID or location ID. And yeah, here we can then have a with clause. We get the shift by shift ID. We do a bunch of other stuff. And yeah, eventually, if it all goes well, we just put a flash message with the shift updated successfully. Then we just have some error handling, which is also a bit bigger in our application, but just for as an example, if it's not authorized, we return a not authorized error, or we put a flash message with the error that happened. And what I love about this is that once this scaffolding is done, if we ever need to hook into this drag and drop functionality, is changing this with clause or adding new functions to this module. Like we don't have to touch the JavaScript interoperability code, and we can just keep in our message passing OTP semantics, like receiving callbacks, etc. And here, just as an example, if for the second demo, the skills on shifts work, if we want to start validate that the drag and drop is the user that is the new user that the drag and drop is going into has the correct skills, we could just hook into this with clause here. And yeah, although this looks like just a shiny feature to demo the JavaScript interoperability, in our case, it was really important for some clients, and some of them even named it life-changing. So yeah, pretty big stuff. And the point I really want to emphasize is that I'm not a 10x developer, whatever that means, or nor am I a full-stack developer. Everything we've seen today is achievable with our Elixir and Erlang OTP skill sets, provided we spend some time learning how LiveView works and a bit of HTML and CSS in the way. But yeah, it's really incredible. In the end, we just had to build a lot less code compared to traditional approaches, right? And by that, I mean, we didn't need to build a JSON API or some other type of interfacing code like a GraphQL resolver. We are just manipulating data with regular functions from the Elixir standard library, like enum, etc. There's no duplication between the business logic across front and back end. Everything is in a single place. And when this validation logic is split, it's really easy to for them to start drifting apart and having inconsistencies in your application, especially when both front-end and back-end teams are moving fast. And what we have with LiveView is this incredible benefit of keeping the same context and mental model when building new things. So even if you are a traditional full-stack developer and you can keep it all in your head, you will have to keep switching between different mental models. And I'm not just talking about different syntaxes, but perhaps more importantly, different concurrency models and different runtimes. And the tax of doing all of that context switching is really high. And yeah, as I was thinking about all of this, about how LiveView is removing this separation between front-end and back-end, I started to think about Conway's law and how the way you structure your teams has a big impact on the products you end up building. And here are many positions that we can have as part of a given team. And we can have many ways of structuring them. We can structure teams horizontally. In this case, we would have a team of backend developers, a team of front-end developers, etc. And in this structure, if you want to get something done, the product owner or the team lead or whatever will have to synchronize the different teams and keep everyone on the same page. Another way of organizing teams is vertically. So you have a team with many different specialties, and in this team, the team is the owner of a certain vertical slice of the product. And I think this usually works well because the communication bandwidth within a team is much higher than outside the team. And since the team owns the full piece, they can just move independently from other teams. And what I think LiveView is doing is really merging really front-end and back-end here, which results in less communication overhead and thus higher speeds. And not only that, but this merge of front-end and back-end is great to disseminate knowledge, break up silos, and reduce the buzz factor within teams. At Sona, I've really felt that people can jump in and out of projects as needed, and I think this plays a big part in enabling us to do that. And lastly, we still have a mobile app written in a different language, but someday, who knows, we will be able to experience the same benefits that I've just described across the mobile landscape as well, with incredible projects like LiveView Native coming onto the scene. I think we are still far away from that, but yeah, someday, who knows. And yeah, before I wrap up my talk, just a couple of final slides to share. The first one is that we at Sona are hiring. So if you'd like to know more about us or what we do, feel free to grab me after this talk. The second one, as Gonçalo said, I organize the Lisbon Elixir meetup. And just want to say that if you are ever in town and want to chat with fellow Elixir nerds, feel free to reach out on that website. In fact, we have met just yesterday evening, and here we can see a photo of the amazing talk that Dinu gave, where he showed us his project of controlling a synthesizer with Elixir, which was really amazing. And yeah, with that, I conclude my talk. Thank you all for your time and attention.